WorthWhile brand, and I hope you understand. Work hard, play hard, get up, stack bands. Time to get up, then slap your hands. Chilling in the club with all my friends. Living in the moment, hope it's never gonna end. Love a new beginning, but I skip to the end. I listen to the beat, I hope to ascend. I hope to cherish, and I hope to win.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to this week's WorthWhile Spotlight. I'm excited to have my guest and dear friend, Colleen Callahan Perry.
Yes.
Director. Okay,
yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to see how this conversation unfolds and see what kind of knowledge and light we can put into the world.
Yes.
So how's your day been?
It's been good. It's been good, yeah. I'm enjoying the weather today. It's a little cooler today.
Yesterday
so
was
nice.
brutal.
Yes. Well, I spent 32 years in Florida, and I moved to Tennessee, and I loved the weather, and then this last week, I'm like, woo.
It felt like Florida.
It does feel like Florida,
I was born
yeah.
in Florida as well.
Yeah.
So like that, it's like an oven in there, and I've been referencing that here. I'm like, it's like an oven every time
It's
you
a
walk
sauna.
outside. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. But we met, at Olive Garden, I don't know.
6 years.
6 years?
Almost 7, really. 2015.
Okay. Yeah.
16.
Yeah.
Going into 16.
Okay. Yeah.
Going into 16.
So that was wild. I mean, it's a long time ago, but here we are, and it's wild. Just like meeting each other at a spot, and then like kind of getting to know each other, and then like fast forwarding, we were going to do this visionary workshop that took place, and like that has a lot of intuitiveness or like spiritual, like trying to understand yourself kind of stuff with it. And then obviously that fell through, and then we connected again and like just had a very deep conversation and like really understanding conversation.
Right.
And then that's kind of essentially what led us here. But talk about the Olive Garden time frame.
Olive Garden time frame. Well, we had just moved here to Spring Hill in the summer of 2015, and my husband was working for a fast food chain. He was a general manager, got transferred here. He commuted for 2 months while we were waiting for an apartment because it was growing still like it is now. And we moved here, and 6 months in, which actually only a week and a half in, his father had a massive heart attack a few years prior, and he was going in for what was supposed to be a routine procedure for his heart. And without going into all the details, we lost him that night on the operating table. And that was kind of an emotional time. And then a few months later, my husband, who has been battling multiple autoimmune disorders, had to take a step back from his employment, and they gave him 6 weeks of unpaid leave, but to give him time to get to see the doctors and see what was going on. And long story short, at the end of the 6 weeks, he no longer had a job. And so we were a one-car family, and we were struggling. And I had started a little walking dog business in the community that we had, and we wound up reversing roles. He wound up taking over walking the dogs for a while, and I went out and was trying to get any kind of job. And one thing that led me into what I do now, which is cleaning houses, was one of the women that we had met in the community that we were taking care of her cat while she was having eye surgery, needed somebody to clean her house. And I was like, it's almost Christmas time, my husband's unemployed, I'll do it, I'll do whatever I can to get by. And that's kind of how I got started in my cleaning service. But it wasn't enough to do right off the bat, because that takes time to grow.
Yeah.
So I wound up going to a couple local restaurants, and that's how I ended up at Olive Garden.
How was your time at Olive Garden? Did you
good.
serve before that?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I've been in the restaurant business off and on for a decade throughout the years, and mostly serving, but also management. Not the kitchen so much, but the front of the house.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, they asked me, "Why don't you go into management?" I was like,
I don't want that.
"No," because I needed to work for myself. I was raised in a business where my dad was a painting contractor, and then we went to Florida, and decorative floors were all the thing. And so we were one of the pioneers in the decorative floor business.
What do you mean by decorative floors?
Well,
like
we would do what was called paint and patterns, which is acrylic paints on the driveways and the garage floors and pool decks. But then we got into a lot of custom work. So we did a lot of overlays. So we'd go in and we'd trowel on 1/8 of an inch thick cement coating, and then we would cut it. What was really popular was a lot of concrete in Florida cracks because we're on sand and heat and right, and settling because Florida's always settling. So one of the biggest things was we would work with the existing cracks in the floor to make a random stone, flagstone design. And it looks easy, but there is an art to it to make it look right. And we just got really popular with that. And that kind of sustained us for a total of 32 years in Florida.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I ran that business for 12 years, leading into 2012.
And so what made y'all move to here? You said...
Well, the Florida economy kind of crashed. We had a housing market crash that got unstable in like 2006, and then 2008, at the end of 2008 was when the overall market crashed. So we worked heavily in a retirement community, and that retirement community, you had people that were buying houses at $300,000 and $400,000 that when the market crashed, all of a sudden those houses were worth half that. And then you had retirees that had 401ks that we kind of laughed, not funny, became 101ks. You know, they lost a lot of money. And the economy just took a long time to recover. And we rode it out until 2012, but then my husband and I finally were blessed with a child after I had had 3 miscarriages, we needed somewhere to go. It was not going to change fast enough for us there. So my husband's family that lived up here in Tennessee said, "Come on up, we'll help you get on your feet." And so literally 2 days before my 40th birthday, 7-month-old child, my husband and I mean, we had our cars, but that was about it, you know. And I left my home of 13 years. I left a business of 32 years. It was a really hard time. It was an adjustment.
Were you excited when it was happening, or
not
were you
really,
kind of nervous?
Not really. I mean, you know, here I am moving 700 miles away from everything I've known for 32 years of my life.
Yeah.
So it was hard. It was definitely a leap, and you build your wings on the way down kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
So we landed here, and one of the things that really sticks out in my mind and kind of paints the picture of my husband's health was we had been seeing the doctor right before we came up for 4th of July weekend. My parent-in-laws sent us some money to come up for 4th of July, and so we came up, and when we went back with the intention of selling what we could, packing what we could, and moving up here. We went back to the doctor. Come to find out, my thyroid was completely off the rails. I had thyroid issues they should have almost hospitalized me at that point. My husband was told that he had a mass so large that they didn't want him to do anything but go to the hospital like that day. And we were like, when we leave this appointment, we're picking up the moving vehicle and we're moving in like 48 hours. And they're like, no, you can't do that. Like, you're really sick. And we're like, no, this is happening. We have to move. And so we did. We moved up here. And long story short, within a few months, we realized that he had to have surgery. And it was really critical that he had surgery or he was going to die. And in fact, the doctors didn't know how he was even surviving with this mass. It was 8 by 10. It was about 12 feet of his colon that had to be, or 12 inches of his colon that had to be removed, and left him just enough to not have a colostomy bag. That's how serious it was.
Wow.
And
you didn't know either until that.
We didn't know
appointment?
Until those moments of coming up here.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, of course, coming up here, we had no jobs at the time. We had, really nothing to our names. It felt like starting all over again. I mean, we really did feel like a couple of kids starting out.
Figuring it out.
Yeah. But we were very blessed to have good family here that helped support us while we got on our feet.
Nice.
Yeah.
What, just from knowing you, and then obviously at Olive Garden, I wasn't necessarily as, I guess, in tune with, the positive side of things and spirit and those balance of things.
Mm-hmm.
But when would you say that your perspective of mentality, mental health started Because
Well-
like my example is really just like we didn't talk about this type of stuff at Olive
No.
Garden, you know, like we kind of like had this
Well, you
brand
brought up
and like,
WorthWhile, and I thought, this is a really, and I did. I followed you, and I said, this young man's going to do something because he's got a good heart, and he's putting himself out there, and WorthWhile really does stand out because people need to know their worth and not just let other people dictate what their worth is to them.
yeah.
And taking ownership in ourselves. Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
I think the struggle of feeling like I'm in a new place, we didn't have any friends, we didn't have any support here because we lived 2 hours from any of the family members, but we liked the town. And I'm a type of person, I never meet a stranger, so meeting people was not going to be a problem. There was a lot of hardship going on in my life at that time, along with what was going on here, with him being sick and his father just dying. My mother was in hospice care, basically at that point, and was staying with family in Florida. And there was a lot of family turmoil through it all, and I won't go into all those details, but it was a hard time, and didn't know who to trust and who to believe and what to count on, and it was a real struggle. And then I'm building a cleaning business thinking, okay, I'm going to get into this and I'm going to build a cleaning business like I built a construction business.
Yeah.
It's totally two different games. I did build the cleaning business. I worked at Olive Garden for 4 months. That was it. I wound up moving to a different to another restaurant bar, and where I could make a little bit more money for my time, and then another one. So I was working 2 jobs and building the cleaning business, with other women working with and for me. And as that year went by, I built it up to about 35 clients, had about 4 girls working for me, and long story short, my mother passed away. When my mother passed away, a lot of family things came crashing down, and it was overwhelming, between the stresses that we were already under and then that added to it. And I found myself a month later physically sick to the point where I couldn't even get out of bed for 11 days. Like, I couldn't eat. We went to the hospital. They ran all kinds of tests, and nobody could figure out what was physically wrong with me. And there was a lot of things physically going on, but there was also a lot of the emotional and the mental breakdown that was just fragmenting, that it was just uncomprehendable, the amount of stuff that we were having to go through and feeling alone in the process.
I just no wonder your body, you're trying to, you said there's so much to
Your
process.
body
and
will
happening.
shut you
Yeah,
down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I came out of that, and within, it was 11 days of being in bed and not being able to eat. And within 10 days after that, so total of 21 days, I was back cleaning houses and having to rebuild my business. Because when my mother's funeral was going on, I had one of the girls give me a 2-week notice. The very next week, I had the other top girl give me a 2-week notice. One was having to go back to school, and the other had a business major, and she got a job offer. So I lost my 2 top girls all in the same week that I lost my mom. And then I got sick. And so when you can't clean somebody's houses, when they're used to being cleaned every week or every other week, and you miss 3 weeks of work, they go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so I lost 2/3 of my business, and I started all over again. So, and that was all around Mother's Day. And so when I rebuilt the business, it took me about a year. I built it up again to about 40 clients this time, and another 3 or 4 girls working for me. And the anniversary of my mom's death and all that came to, and my husband was still unemployed, and at this point we're 2.5 years into unemployment for him, and I'm trying to make it all work. And we have a little girl who's going into kindergarten at that point. And at that 1-year mark, things started to get a little shaky. My emotions were shaky, my mental state was shaky, my physical state, I was very malnourished. I was down to 110 pounds. And I collapsed. basically. I was in a place where nothing was connecting right. And I wound up going into a 3-week hospital stay. And wound up coming out of that being diagnosed with bipolar. And so here I am, just trying to make it, just trying to get by, trying to be a good mom, trying to be a good wife, trying to support us, and now I have this. And while I'm in the hospital, that first couple days, you know, you have to be really careful who you trust, because I trusted some people with way too much of my personal life, and had a conversation with the girl that I had left in charge of my business. The first week, I went in the hospital on a Monday, and that Friday, which was the Friday before Mother's Day, my husband says, she hasn't come by, she hasn't given us any money, and you gave her your debit card, and, you know, she's, you know, because she had to pay the girls, and, well, let's just say that the conversation I had with the girl didn't go real well. And I found myself really feeling hopeless and helpless. I'm stuck in a mental institution, and where am I going to go from here? You know, everybody thinks now that I'm crazy, and, you know, all I'm trying to do is get by the next day, right?
I'm sure it felt as if, like, here you are in the middle, and, like, all these things are just, like,
the weight,
the chaos is,
the
like,
weight. It's, you know, I look back on it, and the amount of weight that I could physically feel on me, mentally, emotionally, physically, was tremendous. And looking back now, I understand why I had the physical illness the year before when my mother died, because the body will shut you down. Well, the brain will do it too. You know, the brain, you know, I've learned a lot from that point, because when I came out of the hospital, now let me back up. When I was still in the hospital, and after that conversation with that girl, I got off the phone, and one of the orderlies came over, and he goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I mean, I was still, and I remember being so still in that moment. And they were like, "You need to come over here and sit down." And they took my blood pressure, and I'm not kidding when I tell you, they turned the thing so I couldn't see where my blood pressure was. And they were like, "Here, you need to take some of this medication." And they later told me that they were very concerned that I was literally going to have a stroke, because although my demeanor was very calm, what was going on inside, I was out of control. My whole life was out of my control in that moment. And so, you know, the next morning I woke up, and I realized, and I start to accept everything to what it is, where I'm at, what's going on with my business that I have no control over, what's going on with my family I have no control over. I'm missing my daughter like crazy, and we were so close that I knew that me being away from her was going to have an effect on her. And I stood there after I got up out of bed, and I looked at my bed, and I remember hearing, and I'm going to forget his name now, but the military man who said, "Make your bed. If you can't control anything else, make your bed." And so I looked down at that bed, and I made that bed. And I said, I can't control anything else in this moment, but I can control making my bed. And that was kind of the first turning point, that you can't change a lot about what's going on in your life, but you can change how you react to it. And so, you know, I wound up spending 3 weeks there, and the night before I come home, my husband informs me that the commercial job that we had at the time that he was working, he was the only thing that he was able to do was those 3 nights a week, called and said they wanted their key back because they couldn't contact me. Obviously, I couldn't have a phone. And then my sister calls me and says, "Oh, by the way, your top girl that you left in charge of your business is posting on Facebook. Please help me name my new cleaning business." And to which I quickly found out she wound up taking about half of my residential clients, and totally, you know, threw me under the bus for my mental and emotional and physical state.
Yeah. And that was right, like you got up, made your bed, had that kind of switch moment, and then that happened.
That happened 2 weeks later. Yeah, 2 weeks later. And, because I just had to ride it out.
Yeah.
That Friday morning, before that conversation with her, I had to be in front of a judge. And they had made it very clear I needed to stay. I was not happy about it in the moment. Let me be honest. I was not happy. But what are you going to do? And so I embraced it. And that, too, is a turning point. Sometimes you just have to take a deep breath. This is where it is. This is what your life is. And how do you make it better? Well, you pick what you can do, and you do better, Another quote, again, and I'm bad with names, and I'll have this all somewhere, but you do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, then you do better. And if you can just keep doing that over and over again, life will get better.
Yeah.
It's a flip of mindset. And so I came out of the hospital having to start building my business all over again. Except this time, I took a step back and I went, I'm not going to build this with everybody else. I'm just going to do it myself. I'm going to get in there, I'm going to do a good job, I'm going to get some good clients, and I'll figure it out. And so it was like putting on the oxygen mask. I had to take care of me and rebuild me first before I could build anything bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just from what I've known, I mean, my perspective of you've always had, and it might be wild for you to think, because like during Olive Garden time frames, but like you always were you were on it and driven, like
right.
you took care of your stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, like, and it's wild. Like I think that there's so many things that happen, but somebody's still so strong on the outside.
Right.
And I don't know. I think it's wild, and I think people maybe lean into that strong side of it and like not feel like what's happening, like you were saying, like
right.
feeling like inside what's going on, and it's powerful.
Well, as much as I was there for so many other people, I felt so vastly alone. My husband and I weren't communicating really well because of the stresses, and I was gone a lot. And I went from being basically a stay-at-home mom. I worked some part-time jobs, but I was mostly home for my child, and now I'm gone 60, 70 hours a week. I'm literally working. I always took Mondays off, and I still tend to take Mondays off, and so I would do the cleaning business Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, sometimes 2 and 3 houses a day, and then Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, I'd work at the Olive Garden. And so, and it was crazy. I was putting almost 30, 35 hours in 3 days at the Olive Garden, and then doing, 30, 35, 40 hours cleaning houses during the week. You can only do that so long.
You get burned out.
You can't. We're not built to do that
No.
for an extended period of time. And I wound up doing it for 3 years before it literally fragmented me. And it did feel like a shattering. It was like, okay, all the pieces of my life are literally all over the floor. What can I pick up? What can I do today? And so I just started picking up pieces. When I came out of the hospital, I started surrounding myself with only good people. And, how do you do that? You be a good person.
And that radiates, and that attracts.
It does attract. If you're good to people, if they're not good back to you, you have the right to walk away, and do it quickly, because it's not worth staying there. But when you find good people, keep investing in that. Do stuff for them. Do stuff with them. Building a community around you is so important. I realized really quick that, my daughter's an only child. My husband and I, were 39 and a half and 40 when we had her, so we're older parents. And so a lot of the people that are in our life are older. The grandparents, she only has one living grandparent left. Both my parents were deceased. Well, she got to meet my mother a few times right before she died, but she wasn't really available as a grandparent would be. She was literally on her deathbed. And so I realized I needed to build a community for my child to have a chance. And I wanted to do that with good people. And so, you know, if you feel, and, you know, I say to people all the time, well, not everybody's good people. Well, I wasn't always good people to some people either in my life.
That good is in
Right.
everybody.
It's, you know, you want to be good, but not always are we good, you know? And how do we change that? We just, again, do the best we can until we know better, and then we do better.
Try to be a good person.
Yeah.
Like, was some inspirations when you were kind of having that mentality shift?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is there any specific people that came into your life that served as an
Yeah.
inspiration?
Some local people, the lady that kind of helped me start the cleaning business by having eye surgery and needing somebody to be there for her. And I've always been that. I grew up in a retirement community, so I've always been around senior citizens. And I think that I learned that it didn't matter where you came from or what you did or how much money you made or how much money you didn't make. You find yourself at some point in your life where you lose control. You lose control of your financial being, because now you're relying on your retirement or whatever, and it maybe not be as strong as you'd like. You start losing certain aspects of your health. I mean, that just comes with age. And it's a real eye-opener when you get to that level. And I got to see it beforehand from the audience, watching other people go through it, but then I started feeling it too with both my husband's ailments and my own physical and mental and emotional, literally breakdown. You know, it was too much pressure too long. So what I did when I came out of the hospital was I dove into audiobooks. I dove into podcasts. Online, you do have to be careful online because there's a lot of good and bad.
Yeah.
Find the good, and then, you know, fill your feed with good people and good places that are going to put good things and thoughts in your mind.
And did you delete some people and stuff like that you were found negative to clear out the...
Some, but, you know, you have to, you know, it's a fine line, you know. Right during my breakdown, I wrote a lot of stuff on my mirror. And one of the things that still stays there to this day is, above all, listen, pay attention. And then there's this line I drew. And it's funny because when I stand in front of that mirror, that line, which has a slight angle to it, hits me right at the nose. And it reminds me that there is a fine line between you and me, and that goes for everybody. And so just because we might be different, or maybe we have a different viewpoint, or maybe we have a different religion, or maybe we have whatever, we still have some of the basics of having family we care for, our health we need to take care of, the surrounding people that we have in our life. We all have that. And so I didn't automatically delete all the naysayers, because
you understand that.
You understand it. And so, you know, it's like the saying, hurt people,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so you don't want to criticize them for being who they are. And I have a firm belief that you just have to give people enough time to sort out their own things, if they're willing to do the work for themselves.
Yeah.
And, you know, you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You know, you gotta love people where they're at.
Yeah.
Unconditional
love.
Unconditional love. Now that's, again, there's a fine line there too, because if there's people in your life that are causing you harm, whether it's emotionally, physically, mentally, you have to protect yourself from that. And I didn't do a very good job at that leading up to, you know, to my hospital stay. I'm a very caring and empathetic person, and so I loved everybody all equally. Always wanted to be there for them, but there were some that were taking from me more than I even realized. And so I did have to step back from certain people. And, you know, without going into it, there's bad people out in the world, and we all have families, and sometimes those bad people are in our families. And sometimes we have to take a deep breath and step away, even when it comes to family. And that was a really hard thing for me to do, because I always believed no matter
good,
what,
family.
you're there for
Yeah,
family,
yeah.
right? And that doesn't always hold true. And again, you know, it's a fine line, and you just got to be careful where that lands.
Yeah. What's some podcasts and books that really
Oh my
stuck
goodness.
with you?
So let me start off with the Facebook stuff, because
Okay.
I think that that's where a lot of people are.
Like groups or like
Groups and and people. I like Christina Kuzmic. She is a Croatian woman who, after her divorce with 2 young children, suffered from depression. And I've been following her since about the Olive Garden days, and now she's just phenomenal. And she's written a book called Hold On But Don't Hold Still, which is fantastic. And she's out there doing it. She's out there helping people. She's done a year of touring. She's about to do a live show in Atlanta at the end of July.
You trying to
And
go to it?
I would love to go to it. I would love to go to it. It's literally the day before my daughter starts middle school,
Oh,
so I don't know. We'll
yeah,
see. Timing, yeah. But she has been a big inspiration. Juggling the Jenkins is another one. Tiffany, who suffered with being an addict, and her life changed, and now she's out there talking from that point of view. Just find strong people. As far as books, I have to be honest with you. There's so many books I've read. Like, I really want to share a lot of those things, and I'm going to be starting a page in the next few months after my daughter goes back to school, and I'm going to be talking a lot about the books that I've read and high points of those books.
If you had to pick 2.
Oh, if I had to pick 2. The Hold On and Don't, Hold On But Don't Stand Still is one. I'm going to draw a blank, but they'll come to me.
Yeah,
They'll come to me.
When it happens, it'll happen.
I do audiobooks because I clean houses.
Yeah, you're
so
on the go,
you know, and what a great opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean, I get to go to work, and you know, people think success is all about money. It's not. I feel very successful in what I do because I get up every morning, I work for myself, I set my own time. I have now a collective of clients that we're like an extension of family. When you're in somebody's home every other week for years, you become a staple in their life.
Yeah.
You know, you watch their kids grow, you watch their dogs and cats age. We've lost a lot of cats and dogs in the last few years, ironically. To be able to go to work and get hugs from the people, and the pets greet you, and you love on them, and you get to put an audiobook or a podcast in your ear, and you're physically doing stuff, which, you know, when you're dealing with anxiety, that's a good way of getting that anxiety out, is by physically doing things.
And you're cleaning, so you're taking things that are dirty and making them look good.
Right.
And so that has to have like a mindset
Well,
to it. Like,
you get done at the end of the day, and you walked into a dirty house and you leave a clean house.
Yeah.
And if you do that for the right people who really appreciate you, that gratitude comes back. Again, it's like anything else in life. You know, I have cleaned for some people who didn't really value me or appreciate me or give me that gratitude of, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And I don't clean for those people
I was
anymore.
about to say that you have the option
you
to be
do.
like, I don't want to clean your house.
Right.
I don't have to clean your house.
Right. So, you know, am I rich? No, I'm still struggling. I struggle every day. My vehicle, we dropped off today for $1,200 worth of repairs, and that's just to make her safe. That's not to fix her for all her problems. That's
Yeah.
just to make her safe. My husband still struggles with his health. He's doing much better. He works for a really great company, great owners, great staff to work with. He's a director. He has helped bring that particular restaurant to an elite status for food safety and cleanliness, and just really in the 1%. In the 1%. And we value them, and they value him. But he still struggles. He's missed 2 weeks of work just recently because of basically a lupus flare, where you can't force your body to do what it can't do.
Yeah.
You have to
Listen to it.
You have to listen to your body. One of the things that really worked for us is routine.
Do you have a pretty strong morning routine?
I do. I get up. I usually go to the little girl's room, take my medication, and I make my bed. I water my plants. I feed my dogs. I water my dog. I say water my dogs. I give my dogs water. Take them for a walk. Come back. Get a healthy breakfast. Spend time with my daughter. Maybe it's getting her off to school, and then it's getting ready for work. So yeah, it's little baby steps.
Yeah.
It's the tiny little habits that start to make that chain that gets you from point A to point B to point C to point D. And before you know it, at the end of the day, you've accomplished a lot.
You know the whole alphabet.
Yeah, right, exactly. And it does. It's a process. Have there been days that I got up and didn't really want to make my bed? Yeah. Did I make my bed? Yeah. You know, did I have a little harder time? Did I want to go back for a nap? Maybe I did go back for a nap. Maybe I, didn't have a job that day.
One thing I'd like to touch with that is like the nap aspect. That's listening to your body.
It is.
If you're tired, like, yes, you can force yourself to, like, I'm going to keep going, but that's your body saying rest. Like,
Well, that's the mentality we grew up with.
Yeah.
You don't give up. You don't do this. You
Yeah.
don't. No, yeah, you do. You do have to take a step back from time to time and reevaluate what's going on. Because if you just go about it blindly, it'll catch up with you.
Mm-hmm.
It will catch up with you. And there's no shame in getting a little extra sleep. We underestimate the power of sleep.
Your body's literally healing itself.
It does.
While you're sleeping.
That's how it regenerates, and that goes for your mind too. Your mind has to shut off. And, leading into right before I went in the hospital, I was only getting 3 and 4 hours sleep a night. I couldn't sleep. I was dealing with insomnia. Everything was off. I wasn't taking my medication for my thyroid on time. I was vitamin D deficient. My magnesium and potassium was off. I mean, when I landed in that hospital, I was dealing with just as much physical problems as I was the emotional and the mental.
It's everything.
And it's all connected. And I don't think we realize that. We want to go, oh, I'm physically healthy, but, I don't have to worry about my mental health. It's connected.
It's all,
It's connected. It's about the connections.
Do you meditate? Do you get into meditation?
I'm learning about meditation more and more. I think I meditate more than I give myself credit for meditating. I do that when sometimes if I'm cleaning, if I don't have, there's days I'm cleaning and my mind's going and I have to quiet it down. So feeding it a book or feeding it a podcast may not be the right thing for me in that day. Sometimes I listen to the music list that my husband has put together for me, which brings in a whole nother level of reminding myself where we are and how much we've overcome, and how much we love each other now, and not giving up on each other, because there were times that we were in a bad place. We almost didn't make it a few times, but we didn't give up.
Yeah.
And now we're stronger than ever. As far as meditating, sometimes, you just have to get a quiet place.
And that can be anything.
It can be anywhere. It can be anywhere. You don't have to be sitting in a park. You can be sitting in the car, sometimes with the AC running, and just be there for a moment. And
being present.
Be present, yeah. Be aware. Being mindful of the moment, the feelings. So many times we have feelings and we want to go, oh, I don't like that feeling, I want to push it away. Or, oh, I just can't deal with that emotional thought right now. Sometimes we have to.
It's happening at that moment for a reason.
Right. Sometimes it's there. Because if you don't address it and you don't take the time to really understand,
it's still there.
And then it's baggage a lot of times, If we learn how to, put it in a folder and go, okay, I understand that this is hurt and this is, goes with my well-being, and this is, oh, that didn't feel right. Why? You have to take that time to really address those things when they come up.
Definitely.
You know, and a lot of times that's late at night. A lot of times that's when you're laying in bed and you just can't turn your mind off. And, you know, I'm still working on this being a routine, but have a pen and paper or have your phone that you're texting in a, you know, whatever app. Write down your thoughts. Get it out. Write it out. There's so much therapy that comes from acknowledging what you're experiencing in that moment.
Writing it almost lets you process it more too.
It does.
It's I say this a couple of times, but it's getting out of you.
Well, and it slows it down. You know, one thing that I heard over and over again when I was in the hospital was people dealing with racing thoughts. You know, you can't turn your mind off. It's just too much. It's pinging all the time. And we have phones that are pinging all the time. Everybody's needing us. And I don't do that anymore. My phone is on silent mode 98% of the time. And that way, you know, and I let people know that right up front, you know. I will get back to you. I check it regularly. But I don't have it where it's pinging all the time.
Yeah. That kind of can lead into, I know when we briefly talked the other day about the podcast, connection, like the whole thing with the false connection that like phones are providing for people.
Correct. Yeah. We feel connected with people. But when was the last time you sat down and had a conversation with somebody? And I mean a really genuine conversation like we had.
Yeah.
You know, and we do. We sit down, and a good example is, okay, so my daughter's in martial arts, and I got to brag a little bit. She's two belts from her junior black belt, and she's 10 years old. So by the time she's old enough to have her true black belt, she will probably be a second-degree junior black belt, and she'll be able to step right into that.
Wow.
But during COVID, we couldn't go in the building. And so we were, you know, a whole bunch of us parents, a few of us anyway, would stand out at the glass windows and be looking in and watching the class. And a lady was standing there, and I just started a conversation. And we talked about all kinds of things, you know, the housing market and the economy and jobs and this and that and our kids and stuff. And the class is only about 45 minutes long. We probably spoke for 25 or 30 minutes. And as the kids were coming out, she turned and she looked at me and she goes, "Can I thank you?" And I said, "For what?" And she goes, "Having a genuine conversation with somebody." Because I can't remember the last time I actually had a conversation like what we just had. And I don't think I realized how much I missed that until this moment right now. And I think that, you know, we get so caught up in, we've got a whole new level of keeping up with the Joneses on Facebook and other social media, where, you know, we're always posting, you know, the weddings and the this and the that and everything else. And yet, what's really going on in your life? Why you know, we don't really talk about that because that's uncomfortable. But that's where the real connection comes in. You know, we have to rebuild communities by being a good person and being open for somebody else to be a good person and having deep, meaningful conversations.
I think that with the conversation thing as well, I think it's a preconceived thing that, like, when you see somebody, you're like, they don't want to talk. You already think that. It's like, if everybody's thinking, no, if that person doesn't know me, they don't want to talk, then everyone's just not going to talk. Right. And then you broke that wall and just started a conversation, and it changed that. It could have changed her life.
Right. And, you know, it's not just listening, it's hearing them.
Intently
hearing them. And if you can draw from something in your past that you can relate to, do that. That's the connection. It's having a conversation with somebody and finding the little nugget that makes the two of you partly the same. You're there. A connection.
It's a wonderful way to put it.
Yeah, because we're all connected. I mean, no matter the energy and the air and the world, and it's just, we're all connected. And I think that, you know, the pandemic, I think it's funny that the pandemic happened in 2020, because we always say vision, you know, oh, well, hindsight's 2020. Well, here we were in 2020, and it affected the entire globe of human beings. We all had the same experience in the sense that we were all dealing with the same storm. But we weren't always in the same boat during that. Some of us were in yachts. Some of us were in canoes. Some of us were literally drowning.
Yeah.
And so we all weather the storm differently. But we all have that in common. We all experienced COVID as a whole as one, but we all had different experiences with COVID. One of our biggest concerns was my husband's health. With an autoimmune cluster of autoimmune problems, any little thing can rock the boat. Not getting enough sleep, not getting the right, nutrition, just waking up one day and your body just goes, not today. Having COVID was scary for us. And yet we had it. We wound up having it over the holidays. Christmas Eve, I was in bed very sick with COVID. It knocked me down for about 3 weeks. It knocked him down for almost 6. It was really traumatic. The good thing is we survived it. But the not knowing leading up to it, I think, was more damaging than the actual going through it. And I think
has
that
to do with the thoughts towards it.
Sure. And it's life, it's anxiety.
Yeah.
It's we don't know what the future holds. We don't. I don't care how good you map out your life. You do not know where it's going to be in a week or 2 weeks or, whatever. People die. People die unexpectedly. Things happen. Your life will change, and you can't always control it. So what can you control?
Yeah, keep taking steps.
You don't give up.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I like to say is, don't give in to giving up. Because, we all feel like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this and I can't do that. And one thing that Christina says is, but you're already doing it. Mm-hmm. Remind yourself, you're already doing it.
Why can't you keep doing it?
Yeah. And you do. You do. You just have to take another step. And sometimes that step is taking that nap because you're too overwhelmed to handle it all. So go let your mind rest, let your body rest, rejuvenate, take a moment.
When you wake back up, it's a reset.
Yeah.
Like, all right, let's go. Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
I want to tie in the vision board to the
Yes.
2020 vision, because you said, and you brought up the vision. It's ironic with that, but so what got you into vision boards? Feel free to hold it up too and show it.
So this little vision board, when I was in the hospital, when you're in a mental institution, okay, and I'm just going to be real frank, and this is, people go, oh, are you really wanting to talk about that? That's really super personal. If we don't talk about these things, then other people going through it don't have a light to know how to get through, And one of those things was we went to 4 classes a day, 2 in the morning, then lunch, 2 in the afternoon. And one of those days was a day to make a vision board. And, it's just on a piece of cardboard that was just, it's nothing fancy. And so I pulled all the things that I could that were important to me. And I'm just going to do it really quick. And some of it stands out, and I like that it stands out black and white, because sometimes that's what catches our eye the most. But it's countless opportunities for quiet adventures, reminding me to take that time to have quiet moments. Meditation is one of those quiet moments. Your life, remembering that it's your life, not anybody else's. They're not living it. They're not dictating it. It's your life. There's food to remind me to guide myself in a healthy way. There's a lighthouse. There's a little girl that I was trying to find a little girl that would remind me of my daughter, because I was missing her so much. And this was the closest I could come. And I'm half Irish, half German, so the red hair kind of falls in. And I have a sister that has red hair. Love, lighthouse, remembering to have a beam of light, something that can help guide you. Exercise, which I still am working on. I have a beautiful gym, and I never get to see the inside of it. But I work out for a living, so there's that. Yeah. Being inspired by nature. And the B kind of stands out by itself, and I love that because it's a reminder to just be.
That's, yeah.
Just be.
I love how you have The clover right above.
I
on
got
nature.
this recently out of the dog park. We have a lot of clovers in our dog park, and I found a 4-leaf clover, and it was a baby one, and I didn't really save it the right way, and it kind of shrunk up on me a little bit, but it's there, and it's to remind me that of my Irish too, 4-leaf clovers, and you create your own luck though. Yes, there's lucky things that can happen, but I don't think that it's just chalked up to being luck. I think that we
Almost reward.
create it.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then the time is now. And this goes so deep because we get so caught up in feeling the past, feeling the regret, feeling like we didn't do good enough. We get anxious about tomorrow, things we can't control, things we don't know about. The time is now, right now. You can only do what you can do right this moment.
That reminds me of a phrase that says, be here now.
Yeah, yeah.
It's that concept,
Yeah, just be here in the now. And then I have over here healing naturally, and this gray ribbon signifies a reminder to a lady that I took care of for 4 years. She was an elderly lady that lived in my mobile home park when I lived in Florida, and she was very alone. She didn't have any family. She didn't have many friends. And after the second ambulance arrived at her mobile home, I just couldn't not go over and meet her and find out her story. And for 4 years, I helped take care of her. And I mean, taking her grocery shopping, doing her grocery shopping in the end, being there for her. And she passed away on July 17th of 2008. And 2008 was a rough year for me. 2008, we were struggling with the business. She passed away. I wound up going to Louisiana from Florida. I was visiting my then boyfriend, who was there on business, and he didn't want me to be alone for the weekend because he knew that I would be very emotional losing Roberta. And she was really there for me too. Like, she was the person I could go and open up to and talk to about anything and everything. And one of the things that we used to do when we left each other was we would take our little pinky fingers and we'd wrap our pinky fingers around and say, "You have a good day." Well, during that trip, I wound up having a boating accident, and I lost a finger. And I was on a pontoon boat, and I put my hand on the rail, and I was going to be the safe one, not jumping off and, being stupid. I'm going to go over, and I'm going to step down a ladder, and I'm going to jump in. Well, when I did, my finger slipped between the door and the rail, and it came off. And the long and short story of that was I was reading an Eckhart Tolle book called A New Earth, and I had just read a chapter about it is what it is. And if you can't change it, you have to accept it. And it just is what it is. And when I reached the second hospital to meet the surgeon who was going to evaluate whether or not this was going on, he took one look at it and one look at me, because it was stuck in the thing. And he goes, "This isn't going back on." And I go, "Well, it is what it is." Yeah. So, and he's like, "Well, you're taking this well." And I'm like, "There's not much more I can do. It just is what it is." And so we moved forward from that. And then when they found out I lived in Tampa, they were like, "Oh, this is great, because the person who builds all of our equipment to deal with bones comes from Tampa." So I had the best surgeon in the world to go in and do some more surgery and smooth out my hands. And most people don't notice it until we shake hands, or little kids notice it more than anybody else, because it's at their eye level. They're true. Down there, they're down around your waist, and and they think it's the coolest thing in the world, Grown men I've had freak out. "Oh my God, I can't even imagine." And these little kids go, "Wow, that's super cool," and so it's all perspective.
Yeah, that just shows you how perspective changes as you get older.
Right. So, and leading back to this, one last thing that really I want to point out is legacy. You know, legacy is the why for me. You know, I want my daughter to have a better world to live in, you know, and how do I do that? I have to create it for her, you know, and I do that one by meeting good people, surrounding myself with good people, and creating a family and a community for her so that she's not alone in this world, because she's already feeling, in some cases, the loneliness. Not so much now, but like when we were really going through it, especially when I was gone a lot after she had had me for so long, you know, the anxiety of being alone was there for her, you know. And I think that that's something that we all are starting to recognize, that we're feeling lonely in a vast world of everything. We have knowledge at our fingertips. All you have to do is Google something, you know. We have Facebook and we have Instagram. We have all these TikToks, and you know, we're seeing everybody, but we're not connecting with everybody. You know, there's more division.
That you're connecting with them.
You think you're connected, but you're not, and you know you're not. Your psyche knows you're not connected.
Yeah.
That's why we feel lonely. That's why we feel depression. That's why we're feeling the anxiety. And then we have a world that's constantly dividing us. You know, if you're not this, you're that. It's them, and you know.
Everything's separated and
We
broken
have to.
up.
Yeah, we have to remember, it's us. It's we. It's not just me. It's we.
Yeah.
We are all in this world together. We all breathe the same air. We share a lot of the same experiences. I mean, we're raising children. We have ailing parents. Maybe we've lost our parents. We've lost our spouses. We've lost loved ones. We're all experiencing that, and yet none of us feel comfortable to talk about it because it's uncomfortable. But that's where the true, real deep connections come from, and that's where the peace comes from.
Yeah.
The peace comes from within us, and the peace comes from sharing with others and finding those connections.
And I think that's a great point to bring up, the succulent.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a gift from you.
Yeah, go ahead.
And it's,
Yeah. So
hold it up, but like.
So this is a jade succulent, and right after I got out of the hospital, really struggling financially, I don't remember what store it was, but they were clearancing off these tiny little plants, and they were looking about as well as I was feeling in those moments, right? Because they were dried out and they were really in a bad way. And I brought home 2 jade plants, and I brought home another one that I think is called a desert rose. But the jade plants are kind of special because about 1.5 years in, they were about this big. So this is going to grow into like a small tree over the next few years. And they were about this tall, and I left them out one night too long, and it frosted, and almost every one of the petals came off. And my husband took one look at them, and he goes, you know, you need to probably just throw them away. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm going to see what it does. And slowly but surely, in every place that one petal fell off, 2 or 3 came up in its place. And over the last few years, I've let them grow, and I've just let them grow. And when they've gotten a little bushy, I've trimmed them and repotted them. And they finally got to such a point last fall that I had to really do a good pruning. And I got 21 or 22 of these sprigs. And they're really easy to repot. You just clip them and put them in, and they go.
Yeah.
And so for Christmas, I gave one to every one of my clients because they're all a connection to me. And we're a big family now. And I still lose clients. They don't always stick. They come and go. But there's a little piece of me now that's in any home that I've been in the last 6 months, right? And then I start giving them to people like yourself that has been an inspiration for me, even though you didn't know it. All those years that we didn't really talk a whole lot, we texted.
Yeah,
I would text you. I would reach out to you and go, hey, how you doing, right? And I do that more to people than I get back sometimes. But if I have a feeling that I need to connect with somebody, I do it. Because there have been times in my life that I felt that urge and I didn't do it. And there have been more than one occasion that those people are no longer here. And
See,
I
and
missed that
you're,
chance.
You're listening to that feeling now instead of like,
Yes.
oh, I'll do it later.
Right.
Like it comes, you listen, and then you act on it.
If you have a stirring in whatever you want to call it, your soul, your spirit, your body, your mind, whatever, and something tells you to reach out to somebody or to do something for somebody, do that. You don't know what that person's going through and what they might have just needed to hear in that moment. Today, kind of a funny example. I'm growing out my gray hair. My silver locks,
phenomenal.
right?
Looks good.
So about a year ago, I said to my family, look, it was 7 years ago that I had on my Facebook that I thought about growing out my silver locks because both my parents had white hair. And at the time, my daughter was only 3, and I thought, oh, I do not want to be taken as her grandmother, so I think I'm going to forget this. Well, 7 years later, and I catch it in my news feed, and I said, in my timeline, and I said to my husband and my daughter, what if I grow it out? And I have been trying to instill in my daughter to be herself and to be true to who she is and to not look at her flaws, any of them that she might think she has, and ruminate on them, right? Be you, be authentic. And so I said to my husband, what do you think? And he's like, look, I didn't marry you for your hair color. Do what you want, right? I'm like, thank you. And then my daughter goes, well, Mom, we don't really know what you look like. And I was like, oh, like that.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, and she goes, because it's fake. You're dyeing it. And I'm like, that's it. That was the moment that I knew I had to grow it out because we didn't know what we looked like, right? Because we're always putting on a facade. We're doing this, we're doing that, and whatever. So today we're in the grocery store for a few moments, and anytime I see someone with beautiful silver hair, I like to tell them that because I don't think we hear that enough, right? And so I told that to a lady today, and I said, by the way, you have beautiful hair. And she goes, really, you think so? And I said, yeah. And she goes, my grandson's getting married, and I was considering dyeing it, but I said, don't, it looks great. And she's like, thank you. And you know what? I didn't know she needed that moment. She had probably, the way she reacted, she had been contemplating changing her looks.
For her. Yeah.
Right. She had been contemplating changing her looks to meet a standard for an event instead of just being who she is.
Yeah.
And we need those gentle reminders every day. So if somebody says something to you about you, thank them.
Because they didn't have to say that.
They didn't have to say that. Something moved them. It goes both ways. I've always had a hard time accepting praise or accepting compliments, and I'm still rooting for why that is. Because I'm always one to always give compliments, but I'm always hard to accept them, right? I'm like, oh yeah, whatever, Now I accept them. And I go, you know what? Thank you. I appreciate that.
And the law or the flow of the universe, whatever you would like to say, like everything is a full circle. And like when you give a compliment out, one's coming back to you. And if you don't accept it, you're stopping the flow of.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that maybe tells the universe, I don't want compliments.
Right.
And then maybe you wouldn't get one.
Right.
Like that just came to mind when you said that. But
yeah, it does. It's what you put out does come back. Not always from the same people. Don't expect that.
And in different ways than you put it out.
True. Yes, very much. Yeah.
There's something I usually ask. I don't know if you've seen any of the episodes or not yet, but I usually ask everyone that's been on, like, if you could go back to any age and tell yourself advice, what would it be and what age?
That's a good one. Trust yourself more. Believe in yourself more.
What time frame?
probably about 12 or 13. You know, I think that that's a pivotal time in your life when you're coming into being a young adult. You know, you're middle school. Middle school is, you know, my daughter's going into middle school this year, and you know, I'm trying to arm her with as much information as possible so that she knows how to navigate through what she's going to experience. And I think that we don't do that enough. You know, I think that we have to have the tough conversations with our kids. We have to have tough conversations with adults.
Yeah.
You know,
Tough conversations with ourselves.
with ourselves. Yeah, yeah, accepting what's real and what's
Yeah.
not. And so, you know, I think that children are so authentic in just being children. They say what they see. You know, they're real with what they do. Their emotions are always right there. I mean, you know, there's no hiding that. And somehow when we start getting into middle school and high school, and then it sometimes follows us well into adulthood, we start doing things because we think other people expect things of us a certain way. And we fall into that. And that's a dangerous, slippery slope.
Yeah.
You know?
I think one thing that came to mind when you said, like, you know, kids see things honestly and, like, for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy to think too, because, you know, for instance, like with, you know, the silver hair, like
Right.
a child might be like, oh, your hair's silver, and like a
Right.
parent that may think that that's offensive, don't say that.
Right.
And then you're automatically making that child think, I can't say what comes to mind.
How many times do we do that?
In
I mean,
all
I've done it.
aspects.
We all do it.
Yeah.
We all do it.
Yeah.
We all do it. You know, I mean, you know.
Like, oh, don't say that.
Yeah, don't
That's-
say
yeah.
that. Yeah, I mean, it's,
That's
yeah.
a train going by.
That's
Don't
okay.
say that.
That's all right. I lived by several trains off and on throughout my life, so I tend to tune it out. But in fact, I lived in St. Petersburg, Florida for a while, and I lived on the water right by the dog track, and if the dogs were running, you could hear the, you know, across the water. But we also had the Tampa airport that would circle their planes right over my house, and it was
Nonstop
It was
noise.
loud, yeah.
So there's sirens, trains, dogs.
Exactly, exactly. So, you know, yeah, we do. We tell our kids no all the time. We tell ourselves no too often. We tell others no too often, you know. And sometimes at the same time, we do need to say no,
Yeah.
you know.
But it needs to be what you feel is right.
Correct.
Instead of like, I guess it could be. That's a deep. It can
Well,
go many different ways, you know.
Before you say no, and oftentimes before you say yes, you need to really pause with the question, whether it's your own question or somebody else's question. You need to pause and think about which answer you need to give. And sometimes that doesn't come immediately. And so it's okay to tell somebody, hey,
Let me think
let me
about
think about that. Let me get back with you. And then get back with them. But sometimes taking that pause is the most important thing you can do. So yeah, my go-to sometimes with certain people is, let me think about that. Let me check my schedule. Let me get back to you.
Process it.
Yeah. And you have that right, you know, you have that right to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't always raised that way. It was, you know, get it done, get it, you know, let's get this thing moving. But, you know, if you do that too often or for too long, you know, have you ever been in a tripping situation, like you're running across the field, you know, maybe when you were a kid, maybe when you were an adult, and you're running and all of a sudden you start to feel like you're falling and everything starts to go in slow motion, right? So you're trying to catch with every step. You don't want to fall, but you're going to fall. You know you're going to fall.
It's happening.
Right? It's happening. And it's okay to take that moment before you get to that point and go, do I really want to run across that gravel? No, maybe that's not a bright idea,
Yeah.
you know? And so, you know, because otherwise we're a whole bunch of adults out there running so hard and we're in this, you know, constant falling, you know, and we don't take a moment to stop and slow down and go, is this the thing I really need to be doing? Is this as far as I need to push myself? No, maybe I need to take a moment and reevaluate.
Yeah. Well, I want to say, like, before we get close to the ending, like, I think that you're very strong, and I feel like that your light shines brighter than you may give it credit. I think that you affect people, your day-to-day life, and really make an impact. I mean, you've impacted me from the time I've known you, and
Well, thank
I just
you.
want to encourage you to keep going.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
well.
Yeah, it's, you know, when you grow up in a situation where you aren't always surrounded by good people and you don't know any different, and you let them beat you down enough, it's hard to get out of that, you know. It's hard to recognize it for yourself.
And you did.
And I did, yeah. I started finding my worth. Yeah, yeah.
Well, like I said, keep going.
Thank you.
'Cause it's bright, and I see it.
Well, thank you.
I think you make a difference in the day-to-day of like the little interactions, like your conversations with people. Like, that's going way farther than like that lady that you talked to at the martial arts. Like, she could have started having conversations with people because of you.
We
Like,
have conversations more often now,
See?
too. Yeah, and you know, if we don't open up to other people, we don't give them a chance to open up to us. And, you know, it's reciprocal. You
Yeah.
know, you have to give to get, and you have to be good to yourself, but you have to be good to others too. And it really does come full circle.
It does.
You know.
It does. Is there anything that you would like to say to just anybody that may be listening in the future?
Be yourself. You know, even my husband today before I came on to here, and I'm like, you know, trying to get my thoughts together, and he's like, no, just be yourself, because you are a genuine person, you know, and be truthful to yourself, be truthful with other people. Sometimes that can be brutal.
A lot of times.
Sometimes you have to look at yourself really close and go, you know what, that isn't something I really like about myself. And give yourself grace to change it, you know.
Yeah.
It's okay. We're all growing. We're all human. We're all experiencing life in our own way. And sometimes you just have to do it moment by moment. And it really is just the time is now. What can you do now to be a better person, to be there for another person?
That's well said right
Just
there.
be
Just
here.
be.
Just be.
Just be.
Just be.
Well, here's this
Yay.
gift for you. Go ahead and open her up.
All right.
I tried to. I don't know your favorite colors, but
Is it-
like I tried to think of what
Oh,
you would
yes. I like white. Yeah, that's good.
Nice.
Oh, I love it. Oh, my daughter will love it. Couple colors of her favorites.
Nice,
That's awesome.
nice.
Thank you so
You're welcome.
much.
You're welcome.
WorthWhile. Be you.
It's an individuality. It's a one-of-one.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it so much. I think that it's gonna reach a lot of people.
I hope so.
I think it will.
We're not alone in this game.
No.
And I say game because, you know, we want to try to keep it light. Life isn't a game, but we kind of have to just learn to roll with it, you know. It's not easy. Life, I think one thing that we have been misled in is life is supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be all about the party. It's supposed to be about the destination. It's not. It's the journey. And that journey is going to have some bumpy roads, and that journey is going to have some cliffs. Quite frankly, it's not going to be easy. Find the good people around you that can help you manage
And stick
your
with them.
journey.
And
Yeah,
stick with them.
and stick with
That's well
them.
said. Well, thank you
Alright.
so much for sharing your
Thank
story.
you.
I think it's going to do well. And like I always say to everybody on camera,
Yeah.
never forget that you are worthwhile.
That's
And
right.
always be and strive to be. I'm going to stop right there. I normally say
No.
to be yourself, but just be.
Just be.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Worthwhile Spotlight. Our goal is to motivate people to become the best version of themselves possible through the power of storytelling. Our stories are written by the things that we experienced growing up, and these experiences, negative and positive, shape who we are and what we stand for. The beautiful thing about your story is that you get to decide how it's told. So as a diamond in the rough of life, hang tight and let your light shine bright.